than whatever pamphlet reading left group that you have with your dumbass friends. That's just the reality. So you have to work within the existing reality instead of sitting around and fantasizing about a spontaneous revolution. Shut up. You are unserious. Oh, I have the utmost best possible alternative. It's called moral infallibility. I mean, this is the classic. Left-wing communism and infantile disorder. Should we participate in bourgeois parliaments? It is with the utmost contempt and the utmost levity that the German left communists reply to this question in the negative. Their arguments, in the passage quoted above, we read, all reversion to parliamentary forms of struggle, which have become historically and politically obsolete, must be empathetically rejected. This is said with ridiculous pretentiousness and is patently wrong. Reversion to parliamentarism, forsooth. Perhaps there is already a Soviet Republic in Germany. It does not look like it. How, then, can one speak of reversion? It is not an empty phrase. Parliamentarism has become historically obsolete. That is true in the propaganda sense. However, everybody knows that this is still a far cry from overcoming it in practice. Capitalism could have been declared, and with full justice, to be historically obsolete many decades ago, but that does not all remove the need for a very long and very persistent struggle on the basis of capitalism. Parliamentarism is historically obsolete from the standpoint of world history, i.e., the era of bourgeois parliamentarism is over and the era of proletarian dictatorship has begun. That is incontestable, but world history is counted in decades. 10 or 20 years earlier or later, 10 or 20 years earlier or later makes no difference when measured with the yardstick of world history. From the standpoint of world history, it is a trifle that cannot be considered even approximately. But for that very reason, it is a glaring theoretical error to apply the yardstick of world history to practical politics. Is parliamentarism politically obsolete? That is quite a different matter. If that were true, the position of the left, but it is proved by a most searching analysis, and the lefts do not even know how to approach the matter. In the thesis on parliamentarism published in the Bulletin of the Provisional Bureau of the Amsterdam of the Communist International, number 1, February 1920, and obviously expressing the Dutch left or left Dutch strivings, the analysis, as we shall see, is hopelessly poor. In the first place, contrary to the opinion of such outstanding political leaders as Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, the German lefts, as we know, considered parliamentarism politically obsolete even in January 1919. We know that the lefts were mistaken. This fact alone utterly destroys, at a single stroke, the proposition that parliamentarism is politically obsolete. It is for the lefts to prove why their error, indisputable at times, is no longer an error. They do not and cannot produce even a shred of proof. A political party's attitude towards its own mistakes is one of the most important and surest ways of judging how earnest the party is and how it fulfills in practice the obligations towards its class and the working people. Frankly, acknowledging a mistake, ascertaining the reasons for it, analyzing the conditions that have led up to it, and thrashing out the means of its rectification, that is the hallmark of a serious party. That is how it should perform its duties and how it should educate and train its class and then the masses. By failing to fulfill this duty and give the utmost attention and consideration to the study of their patent error, the lefts in Germany and in Holland have proved that they are not a party of a class, but a circle, not a party of the masses, but a group of intellectualists and of a few workers who ape the worst features of intellectualism. Second, in the same pamphlet of the Frankfurt group of lefts, which we have already cited in detail, we read, the millions of workers who still follow the policy of the center, the Catholic Center Party, are counter-revolutionary. The rural proletarians provide the legions of counter-revolutionary troops. Everything goes to show that this statement is far too sweeping and exaggerated. There was another guy, for the record, that also had an intellectual slant that decided that the peasant class would never play a formative role in any sort of revolution and would unironically be counter-revolutionary. He spent the rest of his days in Mexico, okay? The notion that you cannot win over the masses is antithetical to a mass line developing. The notion that you would assume that you cannot win people over, enough people over to your side because of whatever background that they have or whatever worldview that they hold, okay, is antithetical to building any sort of serious movement. It's antithetical to building any sort of solidarity, okay? This, ironically, we've moved beyond talking about Graham Plattner here, okay? Like, I'm just specifically talking about the idea that you cannot exhaust all readily available options and that you think a revolution will organize spontaneously. It is the most idiotic, childlike, infantile, disordered way of thinking of all time. And it's not a new style of thinking at all. It is one that left comms have presented against a successful revolutionary such as Vladimir Lenin. You have to exhaust all options, especially while specifically analyzing the material conditions that currently exist in your day and age and looking at how much class consciousness already exists. The exhausted masses are dispossessed. They are oblivious to their class position in the heart of empire. Okay? This is where America was always a capitalist nation. It was a proto-capitalist nation before people were like, we're capitalists. Okay? With its endless territorial domination, its indigenous genocide, there's a reason why America was so perfectly positioned to be the heart of capitalism around the globe. Okay? And they seized on that opportunity post-World War II. You look at a situation like this, a country like this, and you go, why is there so much towards the left position? And then you fantasize about a revolution spontaneously happening. You're stupid. Okay? That's not what it takes. And it's never going to happen like that. The only thing that could spontaneously erupt is most likely a fascist counter-revolution, which is what we're in the fucking midst of anyway. Wake them up. Everything goes to show that this statement is far too sweeping and exaggerated, but the basic fact set forth here is incontrovertible, and its acknowledgement by the lefts is particularly clear evidence of their mistake. How can one say parliamentarianism is politically obsolete when millions and legions of proletarians are not only still in favor of parliamentarism in general, but downright counter-revolutionary? It is obvious that parliamentarism in Germany is not yet politically obsolete. This is what I tried to stress yesterday when talking about liberals. Whether you like it or not, liberals in the United States of America are a more formative political bloc than whatever pamphlet reading left group that you have with your dumbass friends. That's just the reality. So you have to work within the existing reality instead of sitting around and fantasizing about a spontaneous revolution. Shut the up. You are unserious. Oh, I have the utmost best possible alternative. It's called moral infallibility. Participate in bourgeois elections. That's not how these things work. Okay, dude, you and your reading group are going to really spark the revolution. You're going to go up to a trucker for the first time ever, and he's going to be like, what the fuck are you saying? Shut up. And he's going to say a slur to you, and you're going to be bricked in that moment. You're going to be like, oh my God, the counter-revolutionary tendencies amongst the real working class members. Oh, what's happening? You're going to get one-shotted. It is obvious that parliamentarianism in Germany is not yet politically obsolete. It is obvious that the lefts in Germany have mistaken their desire, their politico-ideological attitude for objective reality. That is a most dangerous mistake for revolutionaries to make. In Russia, where over a particularly long period and in particularly varied forms, the most brutal and savage yoke of Tsarism produced revolutionaries of diverse shades, revolutionaries who displayed amazing devotion, enthusiasm, heroism, and willpower. In Russia, we have observed this mistake of the revolutionaries at very close quarters. We have studied it very attentively and have a first-hand knowledge of it. That is why we can also see it especially clearly in others. Parliamentarianism is, of course, politically obsolete to the communists in Germany, but that is the whole point. We must not regard what is obsolete to us as something obsolete to a class, to the masses. Okay? You understand the situation in bourgeois democracy. I don't normally dive into any sort of work of Lenin, but this is what is like when I'm talking to you about how like the broader confines of the American public and how they analyze liberalism, you need to get, when I say get your head out of your asshole, this is what I mean. Okay? You have no movement. You have no organizing principle, and you can't even talk to regular people. That's just the reality. We must not regard what is obsolete to us as something obsolete to a class, to the masses. Remember that. Here again, we find that the lefts do not know how to reason, do not know how to act as the party of a class, as a party of the masses. You must not sink to the level of the masses, to the level of the backward strata of the class. That is incontestable. You must tell them the bitter truth. You are in duty bound to call their bourgeois, democratic, and parliamentary prejudices what they are, prejudices. But at the same time, you must soberly follow the actual state of the class consciousness and preparedness for the entire class, not only of its communist vanguard, and of all the working people, not only of their advanced elements. You know who actually didn't go around with this and actually played their cards very right? Did, both in Italy and in Nazi Germany. They never said, oh, dude, we must not abide by bourgeois electoralism. Are you kidding me? Why would we care about this? It's obvious that the lumpenproles are ready to go. They're ready to do violence on a whim. It turns out they were more successful, partially because it was a bourgeois democracy and partially because the liberals and the petite bourgeoisie, the small business owners, the small business tyrants, and also on top of that, the large industrialists had obviously realized that the hierarchy of capitalism was in the margins of abolition, and they wanted to put an end to it. So they used fascism as a way to stop it, partially because the left were too busy, too predisposed with fighting amongst themselves. If you can't explain your ideology to a coworker in a 5-minute conversation without using buzzwords, your opinion doesn't matter. I mean, I don't use buzzwords, even though people say I do. There is no place on the planet in the United States of America where I have to talk to the overwhelming majority of this chat about the importance of exhausting all options, including electoralism. In the real world, people would look at you like you are an insane person. If you were to be like, well, excuse me, but, I'm not going to participate in this process because I am morally above it all, because this is an immoral system. If you were to explain it to that, if you were to explain to the average person like your position, they would look at you like you got 3 eyes, okay? This is why I also get frustrated with a lot of hyper radical hammer and sickle accounts on Twitter, because I do try to position myself as like speaking like a layman, using common sense. Okay. I try to dilute my commentary in this way. And a lot of dumbasses will go, oh, Hasan is fake. He's a Democrat mouthpiece. He's a sheepdog for the Democratic Party. At this point, you're just arguing with Shawman and never claimed any of those things. You're also wildly misreading Lenin's position on this topic. He argued for the continued use of the parliaments, but that didn't include making it the core struggle of the working. Wait, what? That's not my argument either. What are you talking about? We're not there. We're not there. That's not at all my argument. I never said that. Nobody's arguing against parliamentarianism. You know what the difference is? The Bolsheviks were their own party, and they often use the Duma to denigrate the liberals and set themselves apart. You're not arguing for any of that. Yes, because we don't have a parliamentary structure. We don't have a viable working third party. So I'm using the tools that are readily available. That's why I stress the importance of analyzing the existing material conditions as opposed to fantasizing about an alternative one. Jesus Christ. We don't have anything. This is partially the reason why I always say, like, look around, okay? Experience the real world. Try to understand the anger and resentment that the average working class American has. Get outside of your bubble. Go outside. Be a part of some sort of organizing. Go to a protest. Get a better assessment of like how fucking distorted and out of whack the average American's personal beliefs are, okay? In the absence of an established, viable, working class alternative third party, you have to work within the confines. You have to work within the existing platform that is afforded to you. And it's very obvious that in this moment of weakness within the Democratic Party, which is a bourgeois party, it is a center-right party, that is a liberal party, clearly there is an opportunity there, an opportunity to seize. But it's too fucking difficult for people to even like soft pedal any sort of socialist tendency to the broader collective consciousness with the likes of even fucking Zoran Mamdani, because everybody goes, oh, he's not perfect. I don't like what he's saying. He's a Zionist. You're a fucking idiot. That's it. It sucks. But in any case, regardless of what people in this community say, I think it is positive that while there is an establishment Democrat, pro-AIPAC liberal alternative out there that Chuck Schumer and the establishment Democrats love, liberals by and large are still standing by a dude with a horrifying background, okay? Especially as it pertains to the fucking totem cough tattoo. Do you understand? One must ask the question, why? Two things come to mind. Number one, liberals don't want to play the game of like, this person is imperfect and they said something fucked up, no matter how fucked up that might be from my assessment. Because I think having a fucking totem cough tattoo on your chest is completely insane. It is irredeemable, especially if you did not cover it up for 20 fucking years, okay? Having said that, I do think it's good that by and large, liberals are defending him instead of immediately leaning into the alternative. Liberals did not immediately look at someone like Graham Plattner and go, I fucking hate this guy. This guy is saying he wants Medicare for all. We can't have Medicare for all in this country. What are you talking about? We need to keep having privatized healthcare in this country. That's the best possible way to go. Like that, but killing Iraqis isn't. Dude, wake up! Shut the fuck up. We are talking about the average fucking person, the average American. They do not think of this in the way that you do. Oh my God. This is what I was saying before. Oh, terminally online chirpers that run around. Dude, go to a local coffee shop or go to, I don't know, a restaurant and try to hear what the average person's opinion is on someone who has done 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, a Marine Corps guy. They do not think that he is a baby killer, okay? What the fuck? You do. We're not talking about you. We're not talking about your own personal the perspective here. In terms of broader consciousness, you have to look at where people are at, where the mean is, where the average person is, and what their political opinions look like. Yeah, go to a restaurant where there's a veterans discount. Go to a restaurant where they're offering a veterans discount and be like, why are you giving baby killers, genocidaires of Iraq, a discount? How dare you? You will be beaten to death with hammers. They will beat you with hammers. They will kill you, okay? Fuck. Go to Nazi Germany and ask them if the Jews gets rights as take. You are a fucking moron, okay? Oh my God. I'm losing my mind. This unironically is the text that I'm reading is quite literally about parliamentarianism and building a mass movement in fucking Germany during a time when the Nazis were also trying to build a movement and successfully did. Even if only a fairly large minority of the industrial workers and not millions and legions follow the lead of the Catholic clergy and a similar minority of rural workers follow the landowners and the kulaks, it undoubtedly signifies that parliamentarianism in Germany has not yet politically outlived itself. That participation in parliamentary elections and in the struggle on the parliamentary rostrum is obligatory on the party of the revolutionary proletariat, specifically for the purpose of educating the backward strata of its own class. What do I always tell you as far as exhausting all readily available options in a country where there's no class consciousness, in a proto-capitalist nation that was literally abiding by the principled libertarian stances while it was conducting an indigenous genocide with its manifest destiny ass nonstop westward expansion? A country like that maintains slavery, okay, is going to, of course, reflect it's of course going to have a bourgeois electoral system where there's only 2 fucking parties and both of them are right wing. One is center right, one is far right, and actually turning into a fascist one. Okay? If the center right party in that situation is weak enough, you should run candidates in that weak center right party, the Democratic Party, to show the dispossessed masses that there is an alternative. There is an alternative out there that they might be on board with, especially because for years and years, Americans have thought socialism is the greatest evil of all time. Brother, that is not remotely what Lenin is saying, because the constructs in which Lenin existed obviously was very different. Politics was very different, okay? Politics was very different in his day and age as opposed to what the electoral system looks like in the United States of America in 2025. Lenin says something chat spam's based, and Hasan translates it to American context. Their brains break and they need to get woke points. Yeah, Hasan, your type of electoral politics is exactly what Rosa and Lenin would want. Lamau fucking moron. Oh, maybe the problem is with your translation. No, you're right, dude. You're right. We have the fucking Bolshevik movement. We literally have a party. We have a party out there right now that is active, that is participating in this robust movement. We have commodity production that is damn near identical to the assembly line structure that existed, that was actually perfect for radicalizing the workers on the assembly line. We have all of that, and yet for some weird reason, it doesn't exist. It only exists in your fucking fantasy, okay? Adjusting it to the current present-day American material conditions is something that obviously people have endlessly pontificated on. You might have a disagreement with me on this issue, but this is what I believe, okay? I'm not running around being like, Lenin would want you to vote for the Democratic Party. I'm not saying that at all. That is a bastardization of my fucking approach. That is a bastardization. I'm saying that if you want to unlock class consciousness amongst the American working class, okay, you have to at least put socialism on the fucking board. And socialism is not on the board right now. I'm not saying there's no updating to be done in theory, in saying you're doing a fucking bad job. HasanAbi, they got held by AutoMod. Also, all this endless intellectual back and forth that we're having is just complete masturbation and nothing else, because the average American does not consider any of these things, okay? So shut the fuck up. I will take all of the fucking wins as they come along, whether it be Zoran Mamdani or Omar Fateh or anyone else in a country that has no class consciousness whatsoever, in a country that abhors even the mere mention of socialism, that has been for decades radicalized against what they think is socialism, a true danger for American liberty, okay? In a country like that, where there is an existing duopoly, you have to work within the readily available alternatives. And in the absence of an effective third party that has mobilized and exists and Americans are aware of, why not take advantage of the weakness of the left flank, supposedly, quote unquote, left flank party in this bourgeois electoralist system? It's awesome that all of the people who yell at me over what I believe is the best way to, best direction to move forward in, have never presented an alternative, not even for a second. It's always just, you're wrong. That's it. You're wrong. You're dumb. I'm going to bastardize your position, and I'm not even going to give you an alternative. Or the alternative is revolution now. With whose guns? With whose army? You're agoraphobic. You can't even talk to your fucking Uber treats delivery driver, and you're over here talking about revolution now. Jesus Christ. The pink wave works so well in Europe that all the right-wing parties are done for, right, Hasan? I am not saying that electoralism is the only outlet and is the most viable outlet and is the end-all be-all solution. Oh, read between the fucking lines, man. Some of you guys are too stupid to understand what I am saying, and it's fine. Anyway, that participation in parliamentary elections and in the struggle on the parliamentary rostrum isn't obligatory on the party of the revolutionary proletariat, specifically for the purpose of educating the backward strata of its own class and for the purpose of awakening and enlightening the undeveloped downtrodden, and ignorant rural masses. I wonder if there's anything that we could see. I wonder if there's anything that we could learn from this lesson. Whilst you lack the strength to do away with bourgeois parliaments and every other type of reactionary institution, you must work within them, because it is there that you will still find workers who are duped by the priests and stultified by the conditions of rural life. Otherwise, you risk turning into nothing but windbags. Third, the left communists have a great deal to say in praise of us Bolsheviks. One sometimes feels like telling them to praise us less and try to get a better knowledge of the Bolsheviks' tactics. We took part in the elections of the Constituent Assembly and the Russian bourgeois parliament in September and November 1917. Were our tactics correct or not? If not, then this should be clearly stated and proven, for it is necessary in evolving the correct tactics for international communism. If they were correct, then certain conclusions must be drawn. Of course, there can be no question of placing conditions in Russia on a par with conditions in Western Europe. But as regards the particular question of the meaning of the concept that parliamentarism has become politically obsolete, due account should be taken of our experience. For unless concrete experience is taken into account, such concepts very easily turn into empty phrases. Maybe even saying stuff like revolution now in the United States of America in 2025. In September, November 1917, did we, the Russian Bolsheviks, not have more right than any Western communist to consider that parliamentarism was politically obsolete in Russia? Of course we did. For the point is not whether bourgeois parliaments have existed for a long time or a short time, but how far the masses of the working people are prepared, ideologically, politically, and practically. Much to consider there. To accept the Soviet system and to dissolve the bourgeois democratic parliament, or allow it to be dissolved. It is an absolutely incontestable and fully established historical fact that in September to November 1917, the urban working class and the soldiers and the peasants of Russia were, because of a number of special conditions, exceptionally well prepared to accept the Soviet system and to disband the most democratic of bourgeois parliaments. Nevertheless, the Constituent Assembly, but took part in the elections both before and after the proletariat conquered political power. That these elections yielded exceedingly valuable and to the proletariat highly useful political results has, I make bold to hope, been proven by me in the above-mentioned article, which analyzes in detail the returns of the elections to the Constituent Assembly in Russia. Now, the reason why this is important and ties back to what I was saying is that, I'm going to repeat it, Americans broadly do not know what socialism is, and those who have been taught what socialism is has been taught wrong and are terrified of it. They have been negatively polarized against it. Don't you think that if one of the major two parties has viable socialist alternatives at a time of their utmost weakness and their weakest point of all time, would actually get a lot more people on board to not be afraid of this terminology? Don't you think that that would be viable in maybe even later down the line building a fucking alternative third party? Because a lot of people, Michael from Pennsylvania included, have talked about Bernie Sanders building a third party. This is the best possible time to do it. Bernie Sanders clearly doesn't seem to think so. He thinks that we still need to utilize the existing confines of the Democratic Party. Maybe that's because he is old and an institutionalist and I guess for some reason a defender of Joe Biden, and he's done a lot of things that I don't agree with in general. But ultimately, the very fact that Bernie Sanders is a known entity in American politics and has since 2016, by running for the Democratic primary and having an incredibly successful run within the Democratic primary structure within 2016, that created for the first time ever, a vision of a socialist America, should possibly allow you to understand that working within the existing duopoly is not the worst idea, at least in the interim. Okay? For years and years, Palestinians wanted awareness. They wanted a recognition for their humanity. The game has changed now because they finally got it. Okay? Back then, I'm sure there were plenty of people 20 years ago that also simply wanted a one-party state, okay? But these conversations were not being had in the Western world at all, because these things take time, because it requires, at first, broad awareness initiatives, and then you move into mobilizing. Then you move into organizing. Then you make demands. Then when your demands are not met, you actually show your power is through work stoppages. All of this stuff takes time. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to organize around, okay? Labor militancy did not happen in this country overnight. And it was squashed after decades and decades of propaganda and violence from the state. And also legislation. I would agree with you if any of the left in the Democratic Party was like Trump. That's okay. There you go. That great. You understand what I'm saying here. What Trump has done in the fascist direction for the Republican Party must be done in the socialist direction within the Democratic Party. It's a lot harder of a bargain, but we're not even moving in that direction at all. It is crazy that this is the closest, at least in my lifetime, that I have ever gotten to seeing the Democrats come to terms with left populism as a messaging tool. And there are still leftists in this chat, so-called leftists in this chat, that are unironically turning around and be like, nah, dude, it's fucking fake. No reason. No reason to be the change we want to see. Fuck you. This is defeatism. This is nihilism. You must exhaust all options. Okay? That's it. That's it. We have like 10 social democrats in Congress, and chatters are trying to compare the conditions in Russia that led to the revolution to modern day America. I know. In summary, ironically, libs are finally listening and paying attention to policies over aesthetics. It's at least a good sign that people actually appreciate good policies. Even in this case, the representative is potentially too flawed. Hasan is not defending Graham himself, but rather he is applauding the general public's focus on critical policies for once. Exactly. Yeah, man, supporting Plattner's Nazi ass is defeatism. How can you fucking reduce what I am talking about here that is infinitely broader than Graham Plattner to simply Graham Plattner? Once again, I will stand by my initial assessment that I am a Janet Militia Mills advocate. Okay? Much like many of you, I am already an advocate for Janet Mills. I'm in the tank for Janet Mills. Okay? Janet Mills is my GOAT. She will be 79 by the time she actually gets into office, if she even defeats Susan Collins at all. But even if she doesn't defeat Susan Collins, both Janet Mills and Susan Collins are not only women and therefore better than Graham Plattner, but they also don't have any Nazi tattoos and therefore also better than Graham Plattner. They neither of them have served in the American military, also better and more moral than Graham Plattner. And on top of that, they never went and worked for Blackwater. Again, better than Graham Plattner. Now, of course, they love Israel and they're pro-Israel, but they're just pro-Israel in name only, right? Yeah, which is why I'm a fucking girl boss who is hashtag riding with Janet, Janet Mills, all Mills, no frills. I'm a Janet head. What more do you want from me? My bro hates you and he says it's because you do not read leftist literature and more so do not encourage your viewers to do so. He even says he likes Hazaldin more for that reason alone, which is insane in my opinion. I only say this because I think you were correct about learning leftist history through memes and this being a big problem. I agree that you could do more to encourage your viewers to learn more about this than memes. Yeah, okay. Well, this shit is fucking boring for the most part. This is the most entertaining version of allowing this conversation to take place. Okay? Within the confines of a fucking debate. So, it's just not, you know. Yeah. 3,000 people left while I was doing this, okay? Burgess Everett says, Graham Plattner's life of posting and his tattoos are stress testing the party's interest in younger, fresher candidates. How do you expect to win back, man, when you go back through somebody's Reddit history and just pull it all out and say, oh my God, this person has no right to ever be in politics, he told Dave Weigel. Do I like any of it? Of course not. Do I like what he's campaigning on and the way he's connecting the working class voters? That's the piece that's been missing from our party, said Senator Heinrich of his post. He's still backing Plattner, but says future candidates should stay off Reddit. I mean, I do agree with this. I can't believe I'm saying this, but yes, future candidates should stay off Reddit. Anyway, we are now moving on from this utterly unproductive conversation. But even though actually I don't think it's unproductive, I hope people actually took away some lessons about at least what I